I'll start with the workflow action script today. So I'll just give you guys a little background about workflows. So workflows is uh, in general, right? So workflows are basically part of, or we call it as in Netsuite terminology, we call suite flows. So workflows is, in workflow is, how do I put it? Yeah. So as the name specifies, right? It it actually used or you utilize a workflow to perform some activities, or perform some action when there's a flow, like when a flow of execution happens. So, for example, you have, let's say you're creating a record, right? So you have basic actions are like when the page is loaded, and then you have when you have entry, and then you have before the record submitted, then you have exit, and then you have after record exit. So these three functions are very similar to user event. So it is nothing but a sort of event only which is happening, right? So you have before record loaded, before record submit, and after record submit, and then you have entry and exit. There are
Mhm.
multiple actions or multiple events which are available. So what we do, it is actually something which is configurable in UI. It is not, you don't write a script or anything. You configure a workflow, define the right action, and and you can run it. It could be a scheduled or an on event trigger. So if you schedule it, it will be scheduled on a particular time, whatever you define and schedule. If it is an event based workflow, then you have one whichever event you have decided or mentioned there, it will trigger on that particular event. And so if you go to customization, workflow, and workflow, so you can create a new one. Let me just um, so both of you are very familiar with the flow diagrams in general, right? Like software methodology. We have general flow diagram. So what happens in the flow diagram? You start, you go to a particular flow. You have your conditions. Based on the condition, you go to the next flow. If the condition is true, you go to some place, and if the condition is false, you go to another place, and all that. And then at the end, you have you have finish or end thing, right? This is the general flow diagram. In workflow, also you design or build something similar to that, right? You have your start when the execution starts, then you have multiple stages. You can put your conditions also on stages so that your flow can change, and then you have an end, and then you can recall and everything can happen. So it looks very similar to that. Let's say if I try to create a new workflow, first of all, you need to mention that which record type you are triggering that workflow on. So for example, let's say if I say sales order, it will be transaction. Transaction is the record type, and then you have subtype. So subtype, let's say sales order. You can give a name. ID and all will be generated. Again, the releasing status could be when you say suspended, the workflow is basically inactive. Or it basically, how do I say, it could be, you can call it as undeployed. And then you have not initiating, which means the workflow not trigger. Testing is something which will trigger only for you. The user who is setting it. And then you have release status, right? You have this inactive checkbox also here. You can enable logging so that the logs will be captured. Then you have in the initiation section, we have two categories or two options. One is scheduled and second is event based. So if you select event based, you can select the event. It could be on create or view or update also. So let's say if you want to trigger the workflow on create and edit both, you select both of them. If you want to trigger only on create, you can select only create. Or if it is only on edit, you can select view or update. And then you can define or select your trigger type. So before record load, before record submit, and after record submit. So for example, let's say if I say before record submit, then you have event types. You have create, delete, copy, cancel, approve, reject, all that option, right? So let's say I select create and edit both, or here also I select create and edit both, right? Then next thing you have is context. Now we have web services or user interface. Then you have other scripts also. So all these list of contexts are there, where you have CSV import, custom GL. You have a script also, map reduce, client, scheduled, and everything. You have REST web services, RESTlet. So these are these all contexts which are there. So by default, all of them will be selected except web application and web store. If you have if you come across a scenario where you're using these two contexts instead, you can select them as well. So this is your event definition. Now you have your condition, on which condition you want to trigger a workflow. If there's no condition, which means it will trigger for all the sales order, create and update, or create and edit basically. If you want to specify a condition, you can put and build a condition here. You don't have to write that also, right? So there's a condition option. So let's say you have a field which is, let's say, date. Date is greater than, for example, no, where did it go? Date is greater than or equal, for example, let's put 06/01/2022. Acha, this is in this format, DD month and YYY, okay. DD01 month June 2022. Similarly, you can put condition on any other field. All the sales order fields will be available here, and you can say, yeah, and then I think you can save. So you see the condition has come here. If you're not putting it on this condition, you can have a save search condition also. So if you, it will give you a list of all the save searches, and you can select that save search, which means it will trigger only on that save search results. Okay. Now with this, we can have the basic workflow created. Now this is how this is how your workflow is, right? Now you have a start and end, and you have only one state. So if I go to an state, I can add a new action here. What we want to do in that workflow. Let's say I say send set field mandatory. So we have all these things available here, which field I say memo. So in this case, what will happen on that condition, what we have enabled, whenever you create a new sales order or edit an existing sales order, which is dated after 1st of June, you will see that memo field will be mandatory. So let's say if I go create sales order, if I'm making a field mandatory, actually it should be record before record load, not record submit. I'm just making a field mandatory. Here, if you go to, where is the system notes here? They've renamed the system notes also. Introductions, code. So now they have, I think the admin for this account has disabled the system information tab. Otherwise, under system information, you will be able to see all that workflow history also. So where how it triggered, how it executed, and everything. Why I don't? This is a standard thing. I don't know why they have disabled it. Let me just see. Customize form. Right now, I'm in testing stage. Release always enable login. Sales interface order. Published your communication messages, things, retail, system information. So system information is available, then why I don't see that? Yeah, system information is checked only, right? That's weird. If it's checked, I don't see it here. Field groups, primary sales, intercompany, personal. You understood the basic thing, right? This is how you create a workflow. Okay, let me do that. That's okay. If you want, or maybe I'll try it on a different field altogether. Okay, and we'll try to remove this condition also. Remove, save. Okay, you're saying, okay, now it has to be then on the transactions only. I cannot change this of type, record type. Okay. Let me try it on vendor bill. Test flow, description, record, save search, nothing. I've changed the record record type to vendor bill. On this action, we are saying set the field memo as mandatory on vendor bills. Okay. And I hope we have a field on vendor bills. Payables, enter vendor bills. Yeah. You see the memo field has become mandatory now on vendor bills, right? As soon as the record is loaded, and since we selected the action as before record load, it has become mandatory. So this is what we achieve using workflow. So workflow, the the better thing about workflow is that it is easily configurable and customizable. So you can just come here, configure it, and then change make changes. So anybody who has not very familiar with scripting can definitely build a workflow. So this is actually you know functional. It is actually part of functional thing. So anybody who is functional consultant can generally works on workflows. So they can create a workflow, configure it, and all that can be done here. Okay. Uh, Now this is a very simple workflow. What we did, we just have, we just created a workflow on vendor bills and set the memo field mandatory on record load. Similarly, you can add tons of actions, tons of stages. Once, how do you want to flow from one stage to another? All that can be done in workflow. Yeah. So now thing with workflow is that NetSuite have this, feature available, but there are still certain limitations. Okay. For example, you cannot, you will not find an option to, put conditions on line level fields. So let's say you have a, in case of a transaction, you have a body level field and line level field, right? Be it vendor bill or purchase or anything. So workflow does not have an option to, put any condition on line level field. And other than that, if there is an action you want to, you want to build some additional logic which is not directly available in workflow, could be any action, right? Because workflow has this basic actions. You can send an email or create a button or all that, right? But you cannot, if let's say from workflow you want to call another logic, like call another customization or redirect to any page or anything, that and all is not there in workflow. So workflow has limited set of actions and possibilities. So what NetSuite has come up with, they have this additional option where you can create a script, write your additional logic which is not doable directly in workflow, and use it or attach it to the workflow. That is called workflow action script. So it will trigger as soon as your workflow, when your workflow triggers and whatever action you have defined there. So event basically, whatever event you have defined there, it will trigger on that event, and this script will also trigger, and then you can this additional functionality, whatever is not achievable in workflow directly, you can achieve that you by using workflow action script. Okay. So create custom workflow actions that are defined on a record in the workflow. Workflow action scripts are useful for performing actions on sublists because sublist fields are not currently available through workflow manager, right? As I told you. Now, workflow action script, it has only one function. Function name is on action. It is very similar to user event. Okay. uh, because it is again triggering on a particular event only, on event like this only, before load, up, before submit, after submit, and all that. It is very similar to a user event script. So whatever the way user event works, it will be working in the similar fashion. It's just that it will trigger on a particular event wherever you attach it to, and you can do the necessary actions. So now the thing is, that if you're planning to go with the workflow and you see that you cannot, as I told you cannot build a condition on sublist field, or you cannot put a lot of logic on the sublist fields, then what you do, then you go with this workflow action script, write that logic there and attach it to the workflow.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go with the entire concept of this, you can write your entire logic in a user event script. User event script is also kind of same, but workflow is something which is easily configurable and customizable, and a functional person can do it. You don't actually need technical developer to create a work customize a workflow. That is why you will see a lot of lot of places people prefer workflow, because it is a native functionality. You're not you're not writing any additional piece of code. There's nothing called optimization or anything, because coding, you obviously there's a possibility of optimizing your script, and based on that will trigger, or based on that will work. But workflow is a native functionality. You just create, configure it, use it, define the right action, and then it will trigger. So people prefer workflow, but if there is something which cannot be achieved through workflow, you can write a workflow script, or move this entire logic altogether to user event script. So as I told you, we have only one function called on action. The parameter is same, which is script context, as it is as there in user event also. You get a new record, context type and everything using that parameter, right? So what we are doing here, we are basically validating if there is any line where quantity is zero, then you will return to the workflow, and that workflow will throw an error. Now you understood, you understand that we are building a logic on a line level field which is not directly available in workflow. That is why we are writing a script, because we need to build a logic on quantity wherever whichever line has quantity as zero on a sales order for that matter. The script will check it or validate it, and then it will return back to the workflow saying that this is basically a false, return false or return zero. And then this is, which means there, that is where there's an error, and then workflow will respond, or trigger it accordingly, or treat it accordingly. Sorry. This is very similar to user event. So what you do, script context dot new record will give you the record object. uh, then you parse through all the lines. uh, so we have this API called get line count in new record dot get line count, where you get the line count, because you need to run the loop that many times, and then you run the loop here. So there's one difference you guys should know. In Sweet Script 1.0, the index starts from 1 to the number of lines. In Sweet Script 2.0, the index starts from 0. So let's say if there are 4 lines, so indexing will be 0, 1, 2, 3 in the script, in Sweet Script 2.0. In Sweet Script 1.0, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is one major difference you should understand. So whenever you're running a loop, you will start it from 0, and then run it for less than 1, sort of a thing. Like you run it less than item count. So if there are 4 lines, it will be 0, 1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
Okay. Now what we are doing, we are running this loop inside the loop. For every line, we are fetching the quantity using get sublist value, where the sublist is item and field ID is quantity. So we will get the quantity here, and then we have a if condition. If quantity is zero, we are returning zero, or we can say return false. Anything is fine, which means it will go back to the workflow. Otherwise, at the end, you have return one, and then you have a return statement to map it to the function name. So on action is the function name actually, and the script is also having the same function name. Very small piece of logic, right? So whatever we can, whatever we can achieve client script, oh, sorry, not client script, user event script, you can achieve the same functionality here as well. And but as far as I know, this script also has 1,000 governance unit. Yeah, I can open a page where you have all the governance you limit defined, like where it shows you all the script-wise governance limits so that we know. Right. So workflow action script. Okay. So let me go to customization script and scripts. You'll have workflow action here. So it is same thing. If you upload a file, you create a script record. You will see the API version and function already checked. So we have only
Okay.
action function, right? And then what I do, I didn't deploy it. Okay. Sample. You okay. Let's say here I create a new action, which is here. Oh, because I have not deployed it. And we have this workflow deployed. Sorry, let me change it initially. Let me make it on sales order because our script is written on sales order. Saved, done. Now for that script, I'll deploy it to sales order here. USB, WA, validate, so employees, partner, and say release, log level debug, execute as admin, save. Now we have this workflow action script, right? Now if I come to this workflow, edit here, try to add a new action. You see this list of this script here. You can select this here. Okay, store fields, store resultant. So you need to create. So because we are returning true or false or 0 or 1, right? So we need to create a workflow field. Okay. Reflection script. Make sure you specify the parameter. You can specify this on a parameter tab of a script. Record page and see workflow field. Create a workflow field here. Once again, where do we create a workflow field? Create record, we should. Sorry, I'm missing that workflow field creation here. No copy. Instances and record history. Delete. I'm missing this thing. Yeah, sorry. What we do, we first thing here you have summary, here you have field, right? Create a new workflow field. Let's say test field. Okay. I'll make it as Boolean. What is Boolean? Boolean is called checkbox here, right? And then save it. So this is the workflow field we have created. The field already exists. Okay, great. We'll have to create test workflow field, which is checkbox. Okay. Oh, now two fields are created. Great. I'll delete the first one. Now we have this field here. We go to the same action. Okay. Or we add a new action maybe. And then what we do, we select that custom action, which is our disk script. And we store the result in. Why it is not coming? That is the script. Need a new parameter. Test parameter, which will be a checkbox. Save. So we have this parameter created here. Now we go to workflow, cancel, new action, workflow action script, store results and test parameter here, value field, test workflow field. Okay. So that's how we have enabled this. Now what happens? This workflow will trigger on entry itself, right? And it will show wherever you enter the quantity as 0, this will throw an alert for you. So this is how we define it. Okay. The script